Hey guys, how you going? Campbell here from Autodidactic. Hope you're all having a spectacular day. And today we've got another chat, and we have Laura with us. And many of you know Laura and her own channel, Lorra. I'll leave the link below, so make sure you do go across, subscribe, watch some videos, give us some comments, likes, and show us some love. And we're going to jump in today and have a chat. A bit of a different topic. We're going to talk about how all this information that we've come across about our past and about it maybe not being the way that it is, how that has changed our perspective of the world. So, welcome, Laura.
Hi, Campbell. Happy to be here. I'm super nervous. Hope I don't say any bullshit. So I'm going to try my best to be as logical as possible.
No, you'll do fine. You'll do fine. So, now you're obviously, are you in itself at the moment? You're over that sort of way? Tartaria, call it?
I'm in Ukraine, in the middle of Ukraine at the moment.
Ukraine. Okay.
Yeah. So
Cool.
could possibly be.
that kind of region. All right,
Yeah.
so let's jump in it. So when did you first sort of come across this information? How did you, stumble across this field of thought?
Yeah, how it all started. Well, I actually was looking at some of my older YouTube videos to get a certain timeline because I'm losing track of time really heavily, and I thought it was like a couple of years ago, but I think it was about 3 years ago. So 1 year before I left Germany, where I grew up, and before that, I have looked into various different topics about the pyramids, about extraterrestrials, basically all kind of alternative stuff that I could find at that time. And I think I stumbled upon a video by a Russian guy that was talking about the mudflood and basically just buried buildings. So that was how I got introduced to it so very softly. When I knew back then that it would get pretty weird pretty fast, yeah. But that was weird enough. So it was interesting because I felt this harsh disconnect between the society that is now active and the society that was, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago, 20s and 30s. I knew that they back then were pretty much into spirituality and esoterica, but there was such a disconnect in energy and mindset. I always was just like, what is actually going on? And when I got into the topic of the mud flood and tartaria and that history has been heavily messed with, I understood. I finally understood because it was just a very weird experience because I always loved history, but it never made sense to me. I always asked questions and they couldn't answer those questions. They always, pushed you onto the official narrative, and so it opened up the reality actually of what is going on to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because with the sort of mainstream, I guess, alternative history, it's all about the megaliths and the pyramids, but they push everything back in time. And the one thing about this research is it tends to pull everything forward and make it a lot more relevant. And I think that's a big part is it really it makes us feel like it's connected a lot closer to the past, and that it's not this thing, it's actually just around the corner, and it's probably more the story that it's just been hidden from us, and swept under the rug rather than it's some sort of fantastical thing back in the past.
Yeah. that was the thing, because you actually can go out and touch it and see it for yourself. You're not you don't have to go to the library or go to the internet for hours and research it. You can do that, but it's actually it's tangible. It's tangible, and it's right there in front of us. And yeah, that was something that as soon as I watched the first video, I went out and I saw it everywhere, just everywhere. It's like really like I had blindfolds on, and somebody was dragging me along, and all of a sudden I was like, hold on a second, that was here all the time. How did I not notice? Yeah, it was like a veil was lifted right in front of my eyes. It was crazy.
I mean, it really is. I mean, another thing for me, one of the big things was the star forts. When you start, realizing, and then after you see the star forts, you realize, hang on, these are all the castles that they tried to make me think were little squares, with peasants around them, and they're actually these massive stars.
Yeah.
And it just sort of keeps expanding this topic, doesn't it? It's a real, I don't know if it's a rabbit hole, because we're getting closer to, it's not leading us nowhere, but it's just so expansive that really does sort of put you in a different place. You're looking at reality differently, because you know that the past is different, and it's all this sort of projected perspective that we're living in at the moment.
Yeah, it's way more magical and fantastical that they want you to know. And that's how I also always felt. I was felt like it's not that gray and that, boring and depressing as they and dry as they, presented to us, especially in history. And they focus you on specific topics. I remember when I was in school, we had like the Second World War for about 2 years constantly, and we were only looking at that stuff. And I was like, but what was before? Can we just have something more interesting, maybe? And yeah, the Star Force was like the next level, and that was really, it became like, that is magical. I mean, come on, you can't, these are not just structures. They're like, how? Just like, how? Yeah, and then it opened up all the, with the what you also a lot of talking about are the melted stuff, the mountains. So from there it got even more and more and more magical and fantastical, and that's what I was always looking for. I'm like, yeah, that is the base of this reality, actually.
And it's right there, and all these fairy tales, in inverted commas, they're more real. This, what you find out is all the, fairy tales and myths and legends, that's actually the true stuff. And all the stuff in books by academics, that's the made up fantasy, that's the crap. And like you said, it's to hide the fact that, we're not so much better than they want us to believe. And this realm is so much sort of magical and so much more based on energies and things that aren't physical, and they just try and put us in this physical box and pretend it doesn't exist, and all that stuff's just for kids, right? Just grow up. What are you thinking about? It's fairy tales, and yeah, they just love to kill it, don't they? Kill the imagination.
Yeah, it serves them, and it's a very, it's a form of arrogance that I was always compelled by. I was like, why are you acting like that? Like, oh, it's just a myth, it's just a fairy tale. I'm like, why? I mean, the people before us weren't dumb. And then when you look into all of the way that they built and how advanced they were, it makes way more sense that these myths are based on true stories or on true archetypes. Like, maybe it's not, the detail of that story isn't maybe not exactly true. Maybe it got a little bit, changed over time. But the base of the world that it describes, that's very true. That's very real. That's why it has survived until this day. in movies and series, even on Netflix. Like I was watching The Witcher. And the funny thing is, when I saw the trailers for that show, I was like, nah, that's a little bit too scary for me. I don't want to, just watch monsters for hours. But when I took a look at it, the world that they were building, I was like, yeah, again, the same topics again and again and again. The patterns, you just see the patterns, and then you're like, yeah, the academics, they weren't right.
Mm. Well, that's the thing. All these fantasy or whatever we want to call them, myths and legends, they're all the same story. They're all set in the same realm. All have the same elements. The magic and the wizards and the magi
And
and
the
all
elves
this
and
kind
the
of
fairies.
stuff and the
Yeah.
elves. Yeah, the different races. Things like Lord of the Rings and all these sort of different books. There's something about the part like. If there was nothing to these stories, they just wouldn't hang around. This is the thing. And we just sort of thought, oh, no, it's the gods. It's all about the gods, and it's all about really? Come on. It's got to be based on something and information that needed to be passed forward and that was written down. And I think it's much more real than they want us to believe.
Yeah, and also the morals, especially in the Lord of the Rings. Also, one topic that always comes up is the dark against the light, and how evil came basically to be into this world. So I think they also don't want us to understand how the dynamics, of good and evil, and the moral, and what we can learn about us and the world. What it's all about. Um, yeah, I think that's also a big
Mm.
thing. They don't want us to think about this elemental stuff of life, the basis, basically, how to
Mm.
navigate.
It has all this sort of information because, I mean, obviously, the deeper you get into this, we start learning about orphan trains and all these other bits and pieces that tie in.
Yeah.
So how has it changed the world? How has it changed your perspective of where you are and what this place?
I started to accept and understand why the world isn't such a drama, because that was something that I remember that I always had this dissonance, because everyone around me was saying, oh, we're so advanced, and we have it so good, and compared to the Middle Ages. And it's like it was the society and the structure was presented as if it was beneficial to us, but I had the complete opposite experience when I just were like talking to people and looking at people, and I was always observing, especially when it comes to trauma, because I was healing my own trauma. And when I came in contact with people, I was always like, there is not only the personal trauma, but something that is deeper, that is like embedded in the structure of society. And yeah, when you look into the orphan trains, and also, the killing of the natives around the world, and basically of culture and changing everything, the details just make sense, especially when you then look at the footage and at the pictures, at the videos, and also at the state that most or a lot of grown-ups are like in right now. It's like, what is it called? The Stockholm syndrome. Where
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, where it's like they're so traumatized and terrified, but they can't admit it, because they have, their supermarkets and the water and roads and cars. So it's like this emotional dissonance. And yeah, all these details
Mm.
explained that um, for me. And it suddenly made sense. I suddenly knew where I was. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a disconnect, isn't there? Excuse me. There seems to be some kind of mechanism. We see it and talk about it so often about people. They just, why can't they see? Why can't they see? And to me, I remember reading something. It was actually someone's account from World War II, and when all the sort of armies came in, and what it made me think about is it was just in MK Ultra, basically trauma on these people, and I think this is what's gone on a mass scale as far as this, whatever the event was, the most recent one. It's obviously caused a lot of trauma. Trauma hasn't been healed, but and these parasites have sort of jumped on and taken advantage of that, because all I would need to do, we talk a lot about resetting information, and you can do that in a generation, but if you can get a generation of people without being brought up by their parents at all, imagine the disconnect you can bring in just from disconnecting them from the world, from who they really are, from everything, and then you just rewrite the narrative, because it's like everyone, it's like you said, but we know there's something missing, and everyone does, and they know that there's something wrong, but they're told, no, everything's perfect. Come on, look at you. And if you don't accept that, look at that person, they're worse than you, so yeah, you're fine. But there's this underlying trauma, isn't there, that's just sort of sitting there.
Yeah, I think so. And what you said about why can't they see, or how is it that they don't look into things or just start questioning? And I think that is the problem with it, because if they start questioning, they would have to look at their trauma. They would have to admit that they have been abused and traumatized, and so they could regain their aspects of their soul or some sort of connection to their heart. And I think that is even more terrifying if you're already in a state of trauma, and you can't admit it or can't say it because it's normal. It's normal to be rude and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that always felt very weird to me. I was always like, what? Where am I? Who put me here? Like, this doesn't make sense. Nobody's feeling good. Why we are doing this? Yeah. But yeah, trauma.
I know that feeling. There's this underlying trauma, and we're told everything is good. So I'm tracking back. Basically, I mean, what it looks like has happened is, I mean, they've controlled, they can control the narrative now, can't they? So with all these people believing the narrative, and with music and TV, and just don't look into it. And that's what you were saying, is when they look into it, they they have to confront trauma, don't they? But there's also this thing about that saying that bad attention is better than no attention. So it's almost like people would rather stay stuck in a bad situation, but where they've got a group around with them and they're kind of part of something, and having that's safer than having to step out and like ask questions and confront them and confront who you are and all this other stuff. And actually, I don't think it's more scary, but I think we're told that it's more scary, and that's the perception. But it's actually, as soon as you step out, you find it's a lot easier, in my experience.
Yeah, it enriches your experience, and you will find other people that you can connect to. It's just a different life. And a lot of people don't want to do that. I mean, I know it from my own experience. It took a lot to stop bullshitting myself, basically, and really be honest with myself and look at all the things. And but yeah, it takes a certain discipline, an emotional and mental, spiritual discipline to do that. And yeah, you don't know where you're gonna end up. So I think that's also part of the scariness of it.
Yeah, that's also the fun part. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, also depends from where you're looking at it. Like 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have thought it was so fun. It just depends where you are along the road. The further you get along, the more you sort of learn to stand on your own 2 feet or whatever, in your own power. I mean, I think what is the more you get, hammered by other people and abused, and you see all this other stuff, when you get over it, you understand it's just silliness, and then it doesn't affect you, and then it's like, well, I'll just go and live by my beliefs, you live by yours. Good luck. Yeah. You know, because it's like you go from sort of trying to change wanting to change people's minds to not, you know, really caring. It's like, oh well, if they're into it, they're into it. It doesn't have any effect on me.
Yeah, and it will affect other people anyway. When you're gonna, you know, when you shine your light, when you are yourself, you that resonates with people deeply, and some people are being repelled by that. It's like a magnetism, and some people are getting their spark turned on. That how it was with my mother actually. She was very deep in the matrix and more emotionally, emotionally and mentally, like she was always open to other perspectives, but she was so used to this one very negative perspective that when I started to educate myself, I was just telling her everything that I knew. And until this day, she says she doesn't understand always what I'm talking about, but it inspired her to change her life and to, you know, work on her core and become a stronger, more independent person, because that's how she was as a child. And most of us are like that. We just get then, you know, indoctrinated and pushed down for so long that we kind of lose track of that wildness of the heart that most children have. If they see a fairy, they see a fairy, you know. You cannot have a discussion about that with them. Only if they want to appeal to you and want to have, you know, some love from you, then they probably gonna change their perspective on that. But in their heart, there's always this strong fire, this core. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing, and this is what they take away. One of the things they take away. I mean, just babies. I mean, a baby will have no problem telling you exactly what it wants and it expects it right now. You know, everyone must stop and pay attention because it's the most important thing, and that's what we lose. It's like little kids, you know, they don't get offended if people call them names and that normally. They either laugh or they go, "You're a poo-poo head," you know. They don't really, you know. It's not like this big thing that I don't take it to heart. That's what we get taught. We get taught that, you know, forget the laughter and the good stuff and focus on it's so hard and this whole grow up, you know, I hate that saying, grow up. I'd say don't grow up, you know, stay immature. Stay immature. It's more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even the grown-ups are not grown up because they don't take responsibility. It's always like what they associate with that. It's like when I see grown-ups with their children or grandparents with their grandchildren, you look in their face and in their eyes and you see that the child is most of the time is there, it is aware, and I don't know, it seems more wise than the people in the bigger bodies. I don't know, it's very
well, it's
weird.
like we get taught to disempower ourselves. That's that saying, you know, the person's not complete when there's no more, they're complete when there's nothing left to take away. Because, you know, we spend our lives just putting all this crap on and all this baggage that's just baggage. But, you know, the skill is in getting rid of it all, stripping it back to who you really are and not taking it on.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very good. Got anything else you want to say on the topic?
No, I think there was a lot.
Yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, it's a good perspective. It's sort of gone into how it changes. You know, it's almost like this split, isn't it? That people talk. You know, some people want to sort of stay in the fixed reality, and some people are splitting off into
Another one.
Yeah, exactly. Lifting the veil up and having a look underneath.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Great to have a chat. Great to see you face to face.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, like I said, guys, my pleasure. And like I said, Laura's link, her channel is below, and I believe Laura's just started a second channel too, so I might leave that too. I think it's a bit of poetry, is that right? Sort of
Yeah,
a bit
it's a
more
little bit
arty.
more. Yeah, but more of my art, little less of a little softer than my main channel.
Okay, cool, awesome. We'll check that out as well. All right, and have an awesome day, and no doubt we'll catch up and have another chat sometime in the future.
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome. All right.
Bye, Campbell.
Bye for
Bye,
now.
guys.
Great to talk to you. See ya.